Well, Tamar, it is so exciting for me to have you here for the Women on Fire International interview for the week because we only connected literally about 2, 3 days ago at a wonderful event called Women Speak, and where women talk their truth. And I just loved your energy and I loved your vibe and I just loved your responses. And it just so happens that you're a marriage counselor or a couples counselor and a relationship counselor, which is perfect because last week I did have someone scheduled, as I mentioned to you and to the community, and that didn't work out. And I thought, wow, the universe has just brought me to you, which is amazing. So welcome.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, I was also really inspired hearing what you do and just the way you express that. So it's very mutual, the feeling, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So as I shared with the community, Doug and my husband and I have been over 10 years now, and 10 years this year, which is exciting. And, things have gotten a bit flat. And I remember us being so great together. People used to compliment us on how awesome we were together and how well we fitted together. And just over the last, 2 or 3 years, we sort of disconnected a little bit. And because I'm making some significant changes in my life this year, one of those changes is bringing back the spark into my relationship. And I know that a lot of women experience the same thing. So that's the topic for today, which I'm super excited to talk about. But before we go into that, tell us about yourself. Now, because I know you grew up in Jerusalem and you've got two parents from two nationalities, which is always interesting. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your upbringing.
Well, thanks. Well, I think if I need to just look at my journey, I think it's has a lot to do with culture and with multicultural. It's a multicultural journey. I've always traveled the world, from a very young age, and my background is diverse. I grew up in Jerusalem, as you said, and my dad's American, my mother's Danish, and I've always been drawn to that point of connection between all cultures and all languages. And it's funny that we met on this Women Speak event where really that pull, that impulse to speak and to speak your truth is so much in the front of the conversation. And living here in Australia now for the last 13 years, I live in Byron Bay, and my children really grew up here. I had to pass through within myself a few challenges in terms of on one hand, that really strong impulse to share my truth and to share my ideas and to share my work, and also finding those little nagging voices inside, that my language isn't good enough and my accent isn't the right accent and so on. And it just took a while for the coin to drop that really sometimes what I would perceive as my biggest obstacle is actually my biggest advantage. And the way it came through so strongly in the counseling room, actually, and really doing what I do, and actually the fact that I'm not that easily identified, and how we have these initial first judgments. Oh, I recognize this type. I had the same person in high school, or so on. So somehow those concepts become more blurry, and people can actually really show up in their core self and less with the layers of what's expected and what's right and how they normally present themselves outwardly. And I think that really serves the ability to step in and do real inner work. So
yeah. And you haven't always been a counselor, because the very brief conversation I had with you, you said you were selling whitening toothpaste or whitening something or other. tell us a little bit about that journey. Like, what was your first job? I suppose, you said you'd always been self-employed. So what was your first role and how did that sort of morph into becoming a counselor?
Yeah, well, look, it's an interesting journey, like any life would be, and but really, as I said, I grew up in Jerusalem and was really drawn to theater and to the arts, and studied in the university and so on, and then I met who's today my husband and we're together for the last 25 years. We met when I was 19. And
that's young, right? That's quite young too.
It's young. So I do have a lot of, walking the talk. Whatever I see in the room, I've been there. I know that. I can really, sympathize with the challenges that come with being in a long-term relationship. And people many times think that you have to have a huge crisis in order to seek therapy, but the truth of the matter is that a long-term relationship is something that requires energy, constant energy and constant awareness. But I'll get to that later. In my own personal journey, just so I give you a little bit of a window of where I come from. So I had my first child, my daughter Joy, when I was 27, and I choose to have a home birth, and that was very revolutionary. I actually didn't tell anyone around me, including my own mother, that this was my plan.
Wow.
And it turned out to be a very empowering and life-changing experience. So I'm not, an advocate for home birth necessarily, even though for me it was a very powerful and very positive experience. But it was that first moment of really questioning the system and really seeing that I have the power within me to choose how I want to do things and what I'm calling in, what I'm allowing in, and just having that dance with the system and with the normal concepts as an offering and not as a dictatorship. So it's something that I can choose how and when and why will I take from that. And so that I think that crucial moment really put me on a path of really being able to tune into that inner voice and knowing I could trust it. And I felt it because, with birth, you don't really mess around. You don't do things because you have ideas. You have to really be grounded and really know that this is your truth. And I knew that I wasn't going to home birth at any cost, but I also knew that I could trust that inner voice, that if I feel I'm not safe or my baby will not be safe, I will have the impulse to move to go to the hospital or to seek help or do so. Just that stretching, that ability to really listen to my inner voice. And I think that really was a crucial moment in my biography, really empowering that place within me. So 3 or 4 years after I had my second child, he was also born at home. We just finished building our beautiful dream house just outside of Jerusalem on the edge of a forest, and everything felt like it was ready for us to step into that next phase of our life.
Yeah.
But there was another nagging voice within me again, and that was, oh my God, I can't really see myself staying at home another year, busy with cleaning this huge house, hosting, constantly taking care of everyone, and I'm feeling actually very disconnected to anything that's somehow inspiring me. And it brought a conversation between me and my husband where we decided by the end of it that we would go and travel for a year. And it was just about to begin, the winter was just about to begin. And that was all the way there in Israel. And we were thinking, okay, where will it be, warm enough to travel? And Australia popped in our head. And things just rolled like, you know, the snowball effect.
Wow, really?
So fast. We managed to rent our house out to this accountant from Tel Aviv that wanted the house only for weekends and was happy to, you know, for any arrangement. And the next door gardener was happy to take care of and maintain the garden and the animals and so on. And within a month, we packed up and left on this journey. Initially thinking we're going to travel for a year and come back. And what happened for me at first was really this huge relief, you know, not needing to maintain this big house. You know, whenever we have some washing to do, we all stop with our caravan and go to the nearest laundry shop and kind of fold the laundry on the back of the car. And it was all quite romantic at first. And then, you know, after 2 months, it started to be hard. You know, I was still breastfeeding my little one. He wasn't even 1 year old then.
Wow.
I really felt, okay, I actually need to land somewhere. And we were heading towards, you know, Byron Shire, where we had a few friends, and it was somehow a destination that I knew I was heading towards. And once we got to the Shire, we you know, to just cut a long story short, we went to visit really good friends of ours. They were living on a property with another house that was just becoming vacant. And we moved into that house and rented. And really my feeling once I arrived here was, I have another home.
Oh, wow.
It was a strong sense that I could not ignore. And I remember telling my husband, look, I need 5 years here. I feel there is something in me here that needs to unfold. There is something in me here that needs to really absorb and embody what I'm feeling. And that was a very strong impulse. And for my husband, it was, you know, as you wish. Well, as you wish. I'm here for you. But it was very clear that he was here for me, and I really, really appreciated it. It was another moment, you know, another moment of that sense that that I can trust that impulse and actually lead the destiny of us as a couple and as a family.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only for me, you know, I did have this strong sense of the feminine is very strong here. The feminine has a level of safety and freedom and nourishment that I wasn't familiar with. And it was really on a vibrational level. And but it was also for the children. And I came across the Steiner School that's here in Mullumbimby, and for the first time I realized that, you know, part of the impulse of actually leaving Israel and going on this journey was because on some level I couldn't really see how I could send my children to a school, to the system that I knew was not gonna really give them what I believe they need. And somehow I wouldn't have partners in raising my children. I'd need to always hope they wouldn't create damage within their souls in a way.
Yeah.
And, not that it's all bad, but I knew from my own journey that I had to accommodate to the system. And by that, really shut the door to many sides in my own self. And I wanted something different for my children.
Yeah.
And when I came across this school, I felt, like it's actually a system that I could trust. And it actually not only will not create damage, but actually would give them more than I could give them by myself.
Mm.
And so that was a very, very strong point as well. And then, so I was still breastfeeding, and I was breastfeeding my second child till he was 2.5.
Okay.
And you know, I had no awareness in terms of self-care. I did not know what to eat. I did not know what I need. I did not know that it is actually crucial for me to carve that space in my life in order, not only for myself, but for myself to be stronger in order to keep on giving and keep on doing what I need to do. What I felt, so, you know, that instinct to do and really support everyone around me and hold this space for everyone to be able to grow within it and nourish it. And what happened was that life intervened, and it actually intervened as a crisis. On the first day of class 1 for my daughter, on that same day in the afternoon, my husband was hit by a car.
Oh, no.
And had a life-threatening accident. And that shuffled all the cards and really brought me very, very close to really making really crucial, again, choices within myself of how am I going to deal with what happened. Will I, you know, freak out and go into fear, or will I trust and go into love and really trust that everything that is happening is love, everything, including everything, because it was a moment in my life where anything could have happened. We could have lost him, you know, he could have not walked again. Anything could have happened. And it was a moment of choice, and I felt I made the choice, and I made the choice to trust. And you know, his condition stabilized, and after a few months of being in the hospital, he came back home. He was still on a wheelchair and had to have, you know, full care, and we stepped into a process of rehabilitation. But what that meant in terms of my journey was that, you know, we had to create an income, of course, and all of a sudden I was the one that would need to do that. And I had this idea, and it actually came from my mother-in-law. She saw this little, you know, article in the newspaper in Israel talking about a waterless, biodegradable car wash product from South Africa, by the way.
From South Africa, my hometown.
Anyway, we traced that down, and we decided to create this waterless car wash business. And I went right into it. I was washing cars all day. I had a crew of workers with me, and I was doing that for about 6 months, and we broke even. But at some point I felt I can't really sustain myself in this environment. It's too male dominant. It's not me. And as I was thinking these thoughts, another friend from the States was talking to me about this business that's actually really taking off in the States, and was really sitting on this moment, you know, where the teeth whitening industry was moving from the dental into the beauty world, into the cosmetic. So, you know, from charging thousands of dollars for a treatment, you can charge so much less if a beautician does it, and so on. And I was quite intrigued, and at some point I decided, okay, I'm going to start all over again. And I created this business for teeth whitening, and at some point had over 30 people work for me, and it became a very successful wholesale business. And I did the you know, I do the expos in Sydney and Melbourne, and created a really beautiful business that supported us. And I was working with women, because most of the people in the teeth white in the cosmetic industry are women. Yeah. So it was very interesting, very grounding. But as I said, I didn't really know how to take care of myself. And at some point I reached, I hit a wall, and it was a wall of burnout and stress. And I remember myself, stopping to get yet another cup of coffee, thinking, okay, I just need this pick me up so I could go. I think I was actually, driving a lot and having a lot, doing a lot, and I was about to do some grocery shopping, and I just needed that cup of coffee. But I also knew that it doesn't matter how much coffee I'm going to drink now. I literally can't get out of the car. I am so exhausted.
Oh, wow.
And I took that decision, to stop drinking coffee. And that threw me into an 11-day migraine. I was 11 days in bed in pain, in agony, and came out of that very confused within myself, very, very exhausted, and not really knowing how to build myself back again. I just knew that there's something that I was doing that I can't keep on doing. Something has to change. And that threw me into a very deep personal development journey. And I was getting help. I got myself support. I was learning how to eat, how to cleanse, how to work with my emotions. Got lots of tools and lots of support. And really, the person orchestrating all that was me. It wasn't anything that I really outsourced. Everything I outsourced was actually me deciding that this is going to be the next step, that this is going to be my teacher, that this is going to be my practice. So I'm a big believer in therapy. And I don't necessarily think that, the therapist has a magic wand and has all the solution. But I do believe that there is like a alchemical miraculous transformation that happens through connection. And sometimes the therapist just actually creates the space and the moment of that connection to really trigger the transformation to occur. And after probably a year or two of intense inner work, I was a completely different person. And I really connected to that place within me that wanted to facilitate that and to really use my internal resources of who I was and my abilities to help other people as well. And I took an incredible counseling course with Sophia College for 3 years, and became a counselor. And initially, I was working with women, extraordinary women that, like me, had this kind of inner impulse to do inner work and to evolve. And I remember one day I had a client, and she told me, look, I've like all aspects in my life are actually incredible. I've done so much work and I've achieved so much within myself. But my relationship is still somehow stuck in the dark ages. And that, it's like those moments where the violins start, like.
Yeah, it's the angels, the heavens open.
Like, oh my God, that is what I am meant to do. I am meant to step into that place of being the bridge between all this work that women are doing and accessing and working with their partners. Because, we do all that, and in the end, we can't implement it because somehow that link is still not stable enough, and that transference of information, and how do we really embody everything that we've learned.
Yeah.
And that's where it really happens. That's where it really happens. That's where, you know, I think real progress and that embodied sense of joy and contentment, that's where it sits. And that's also where we get the strongest mirrors to where we still have work to do. And we can't do it alone, and we're not going to arrive anywhere alone anyway, because we're not separate. So at some point, you know, I don't necessarily believe that every relationship needs to necessarily last forever, but I do strongly believe that many relationships, people give up just because they don't have tools. And really just because somehow we have this projection that relationships is the one thing that needs to work spontaneously without us needing to invest any resources in it. And nothing is further from the truth.
Yes. Wow. That was such a great story, Tamar. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I always like hearing the story behind the woman, because, you know, sometimes we always see the person that's together and is where they are, and we have this inaccurate perception that they were just born this way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I always like showing the journey, and you've had such an amazing journey. I've been writing all these notes, and I just, I want to delve a little bit further into that. I love what you're saying, and I think this is really relevant, is that the one thing I feel as women in particular, we grow up with fairy tales where the princess meets the prince and lives happily ever after. And never is there what happens after the after. And it's really important. And as an individual, I always knew that a relationship would be work. And I always knew that. I knew that monogamy would be work, because I understood that, in my opinion, it is impossible that out of the 7 billion people in the world, that only one person suited to me. I make that choice. And it is a system, isn't it? It is a system, like marriage was a system in the past where women had to marry to survive. And that system sort of carried over. So I love that idea. So how can we put energy and resources into our relationship?
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? What does that mean?
Well, I think if you really look, what are our resources? Our resources are actually our time and our attention. These are this is our currency, our time and our attention. And you direct your resources to what you value. And I think once you realize that our relationships, our marriage is not based like it used to be on the survival of the family. It's not necessarily a financial institution, and it's not also only a romantic emotional institution. There's something in where relationships stand today that is very different. It would include the economic element and the emotional element, but there is an extra element, and that's really the element of choice, because we don't have to be in a relationship. We can survive without, economically and emotionally. So it brings us to this place where we're actually in a relationship because we want to be in a relationship, And we want to want the relationship. And if we don't feel that wanting, we feel something's wrong.
Yes.
So, you know, I love the way you call your work, you know, working with fire, that element of fire, women on fire, and you're looking at that element of fire, that impulse, that desire, that aliveness. And you think about it, it's the most elusive energy you can access. It's ever changing. You can't tame it. Once you think you got it, it's gone. So where is it? Where is it? What are we looking for? But yet we want to have it.
Yes.
And we don't feel that we can settle for less, because we don't have to settle for less. So I think our generation is really leading in terms of how do we figure this one out. You know, what was once considered to be a satisfactory relationship for our parents, it doesn't work for us.
Yeah.
It's just not enough.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I was listening to an interview with a gentleman called John Butcher and his wife, and they do something called Life Book, you know, where they help people come together and develop a book for their life or how they would like their life to be. And they, like you, they met really young, I think at the age of 19 or something. And the one thing that they did right in the beginning was they committed to each other's love. They said, if anything else, we are committed to each other's love. And everything has come from that. So he's an artist, and I can't recall what she does. But yet today, that is the priority. It was always a priority. And like you, they've had businesses, they've had children, they've chosen to homeschool their children, they've chosen to live in different countries. They have also chosen not to be part of the system.
Yeah.
You know, how important do you think it is really to commit to each other's love?
I think answering that question, what comes up for me is that you can't give what you don't have. Love is something that if you do not recognize it within yourself, if you do not have it within yourself, you cannot give it to another. And I think relationships are a great mirroring and a great call to really challenge that relationship that we have firstly with ourselves. You know, when a couple comes to see me, usually very fast we get to the place where both sides are expressing, you know, if only the other person would be different, everything would be okay.
Yes, I recognize that talk.
And we all do that. We all do that. But there comes a place where you really realize that the only place that you could do change and the only place that you could do work is within yourself.
I absolutely acknowledge that. And it was quite interesting because over the last 3 years, I was working in a business that wasn't working for us. And then Doug was made redundant. And I was getting niggly with him. Yeah, I was getting angry at him. Like, why is he not stepping up? And it was really, as you say, a true reflection of me. I was literally just projecting my own feelings onto him. I loved within your story how you spoke about you didn't know how to love yourself, which sounds so foreign now because, you know, I'm in the personal development space and you've done your own personal development. And hearing someone say that seems quite foreign to me now. And yet that is the reality of life. There are so many women out there who are killing themselves, working, looking after their family, being super moms. How do you look after yourself? Or first of all, how do you recognize that you're not looking after yourself? And then what can you do to start looking after yourself?
I think that's a great question. And, you know, if I link it back to what we were talking about, the fire and the desire, and I can see myself, you know, 10 years down the track, you know, backwards. And if I would be listening to this conversation and I would hear all these words about, you know, the fire and the desire, I would just like, that just sounds like hell to me. It just sounds like another thing on my to-do list. I cannot deal with that. What am I meant to wear, you know, high heels and be sexy? Like, what are you talking about? Where are you even coming from? And I think the first step, you know, is really bringing it back home. You know, where does that really meet me? Not the idea of what I have about what, you know, desire and fire might look like, but actually what is really going on for me. I think, you know, many times we live two parallel realities. We live our everyday life where we function with all our roles and duties and accomplishments and whatever we do out in the life. And then we have a parallel reality with our partner. And that parallel reality many times is expected, not only like we were talking, to work with no resources of time and attention, but also to be somehow telepathic. So everyone's meant to know what the other needs without anyone ever stopping to actually, you know, access it. And I think it, you know, in my journey, where when I came to that moment where I said to myself, I need to ask, or I would like to ask for what I need, what I found most overwhelming is not even the voicing of what I need, but it was actually accessing what do I need. I didn't myself even know, what do I need? What do I want? So of course I couldn't express it, and then of course I couldn't be able to receive it, and not even, you know, be available to allow my nervous system to get to a place where I could even be in a state of receiving. And you know, I think in terms of the dynamics between the masculine and the feminine, it really touches a core wound, because a lot of the masculine, you know, and it can be distributed individually in every relationship, and of course in every human, you know, there are elements of masculinity and elements of femininity. But you know, the part of the attributes of the masculine is really this. It is geared to provide. It is geared to do right. It is geared to serve. It is geared to know I did well by you, and it's somehow constantly meeting this aggressive rejection, because the feminine element, which is actually the receiving element within us, is so confused as to what it even wants and how does that even look like. Yeah. So I think, you know, when I was going through my own journey, I realized that there was a level of resilience that I had when I was younger. I could tell my body to do things. I could put myself in I could bypass in a way the obstacles that I had within me in order to create connection, to step into intimacy. But at some point I couldn't do that anymore. My body just would not do what I told it to do. And this gap between us grew and grew, and it was, I mean, everything he was saying was about, you know, him feeling alone and rejected and not having the intimacy and the connection that he wanted was valid, and everything I said was valid as well. You know, I can't, it's not my job. I can't do it because it's my job. I'm just not feeling it, you know. I want it, but I don't. Yeah. So where does that meet? And what's amazing is that just sitting in the honesty of this conversation, and what that brings up is for itself very, very healing, and for itself is very, very rewarding. And I don't think, there is a one size fits all, but I do see that in every relationship we have this dance. We have this dance between one that is seemingly more the pursuer and one that is seemingly more the withdrawer. And they're constantly, the more you do that, the more I do that, the more you push forward, the more I back away. And couples get trapped in this dance. And, many times it's just, they it's not who they necessarily are or would be in a different relationship. It's somehow their role in this relationship. And really unfolding that and looking at, I could go in and really say something very interesting that I've discovered about desire, because we are talking about fire and desire.
Yes.
And the interesting about the thing that I discovered about desire is that it is multifaceted. And one side of desire is spontaneous. Is that spontaneous kind of blasting energy of desire. But desire has another side as well. And that is not less. And it's very helpful to know. There is an element of desire, and this is actually comes out of Emily Nagoski's work in her book Come As You Are, which I highly recommend.
I've heard of it, I think.
Yeah, so I highly recommend. So she talks there. She puts a term, and when I read it, it was like incredible, of responsive desire. So desire that doesn't come out of the blue, but is actually a response. And so it's desire that's cultivated. It's desire that it has a build-up. It's a response to the things that are coming at it, or the things that are removed from it. Sometimes it's, if the kid's in the next room, you don't have the conditions, the response would not be the response that will cultivate desire. So sometimes you need to remove certain things. Sometimes you need to add certain things. So responsive desire is a cultivated desire that comes out of it's more of a conversation. It's less of an out of the blue situation. And I think realizing that is a huge aha moment for many women and for many couples. Desire is not less if it's if it's relational. It's if it's responsive.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. On so many levels. I feel one of the first step would really be for women to stop for a second. Your opportunity to stop was when your migraine came. If your migraine hadn't have come, you wouldn't have stopped. You would have just carried on and carried on. And I feel that often women do not take the opportunity to stop because they've put such stigma around that. Oh, I need a bit of me time. They've layered that with such feelings of inadequacy and all sorts of things that they don't stop. And really for your nervous system to just relax for a second and to give yourself the opportunity to find out what you want, you really do need to stop.
100%, 100%. And I'll add to that I think for that moment of stopping, the what happens mentally is a level of surrender. And it's a place where you realize, if I could figure this out by myself, I would have already figured it out. Mm-hmm. So I can't figure it out by myself. And that moment of surrender is that first crack to be able to receive something else, to be able to receive something new. And that exercise of receiving is actually the cultivation of the feminine. I don't know how to figure this out. You know, please help me. And something new can come only from that moment. And for me, you know, it was that moment where I was on my knees. I was on my knees. Please help me. You know, please help me. And that connection that I had to the divine within me. And, you know, wasn't necessarily looking up to the sky. I was actually looking within, into that element within me that could allow something new to arise, a new perspective, basically a miracle, a miracle.
Absolutely, because the Course of Miracles, I just have an ambulance going past. The Course of Miracles.
That just means help's on its way.
Isn't that ironic? That we ask for help, here it comes. Hopefully not. We're not in that stage just yet. And the Course in Miracles, which is a beautiful book. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah, I am a student of the Course of Miracles, so definitely.
Amazing. And a miracle in the Course of Miracles is a change of perspective.
Exactly.
Literally, that's what it is.
Exactly.
And I do love that. I love that you, I feel that we are always looking for external resources, and we live in an information era where everyone's looking externally for information, and yet sometimes exactly what we have is right within us. And if we just ask ourselves and the divine, like, hey man, just help me out here, and allow ourselves the time to listen, yes, it will come. And I'm also, you know, coming to a counselor is very, very powerful, just to sometimes help peel away the layers, or also to help you to stop.
Yes.
I feel that the answers we have is within us very, very often.
Yes.
We can trust that, you know.
Yeah.
Secondly, I wanted to really highlight that communication.
Yes.
Because I know that, much to my husband's disgust, and because I do like talking, and I think I use too many words for his liking sometimes, I do really sit down and talk about things. Like, it's really important to me, you know, let's talk this out, like, let's make this happen. And so often, and talking about those things that are uncomfortable, that allow us to be vulnerable. Because in the beginning, our hormones are going crazy in relationships, and, you know, everything gels, and eventually when those hormones subside, it's to know that your partner wants the best for you, and to open up that line of communication, saying, hey, this is how I feel.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that this is how I feel, but this is how you made me feel. This is how I feel. How can we, I know that there's so many women out there who feel that they can't talk to their partners.
I think that's a great question, and I'm gonna answer it in a way that does not take away from what you were saying, because I'm a very verbal person, and I really believe that a lot of our power is through voicing and speaking and expressing ourselves. But I want to refer to Esther Perel's work.
I know her; she's great.
She's great, and one of she's had so many contributions to the conversation, but one of them was really looking at intimacy, and really owning the fact that intimacy has become in the Western world a mental talk about it phenomena, and that is a feminization of intimacy, and sometimes it is a huge bypass to intimacy. And yes, as women, many times that is the way we process, and that is the way we think, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way. And many times there is that, you know, underlying expectation of men to be able to participate in the same way, where really they're not meant to. They're not meant to. And I think realizing that, you know, many times as women, we want to while we want to talk about it and process through talking, and it's not taking away from the fact that, talking and honesty and really saying things as they are is very, very important, and really standing in your truth. But sometimes it's also a bypass to landing in our body and actually allowing ourselves to feel intimacy.
I love that. And what really comes up for me there is I do talk a lot, and I grant that. And sometimes Doug will go, enough already, right? And also when I talk about something I'm excited about because I learn and I interview phenomenal women like you, and I'm always excited about it. And I can see him glazing over. And the one time I gave him an out, and I said, look, if you don't want to have this conversation, just say, hey, babe, I just don't want to participate in this conversation. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. And it's very accurate, because I was tapping out of my body. I was verbalizing not to feel intimacy in my body. That's a great point.
Yes, and I think it's really, really scary for us as women, because on a very, very deep level, we know that we haven't been safe being in our body, and we haven't been safe trusting our instincts, and we haven't been safe following our desires and passion. And it has been ingrained and installed deeply, deeply in our collective cellular memory. So to retrain ourselves and to retrain our bodies and to actually have a partner that would step into that process with us is actually intimacy on the deepest, deepest level.
That's amazing, because I was watching a bit of an interview on Tantra, and they were talking about the vagina, the energy of the vagina, and how every time you have sex without really wanting it. So like, I just do it because, I haven't given you sex in forever. The vagina shrinks and it shrinks and it shrinks and it shrinks. And eventually it's a mouse of itself. And that's why the sex becomes so difficult, because exactly as you're saying, we don't feel safe, and we've shrunken away, and it's about learning slowly to release that again. And I think that really is a process.
Yes.
That's something like Tantra or any therapy. It's a process to go through. I really feel this is just, in my experience, I think that's just something that's really helpful to talk about and to get help with.
Yes. And with my clients, I refer them to very specific practices. And the one that I really want to share with your audience, because it's such a game changer for so many couples, is the one by OneTaste.com, and it's called Orgasmic Meditation. It's a practice that is that is done, and it's presented so well, and it's such a game changer. What happens that it's a very safe container where everyone knows exactly what's going to happen, and everyone knows exactly how long it's going to take for. It's a practice, and that's why it's a meditation. It's not a tantric exercise. It's really a meditation. And for the woman, all she needs to do is actually nothing. All she needs to do is actually be in a state of receiving without moving an inch, without, and that for the nervous system is huge. And for the man, there is a very, very simple practice, and that is very structured also. And really all it requires is a very, very gentle stroke, as gentle as you would pat a baby's eyebrow, on the left quadrant of the clitoris.
Ooh, sounds exotic. Orgasmic, rather.
Well, it's really not aimed for climax.
Yeah.
not, not aimed for performance. It's a very, it's the cultivating of actually of a very, very intimate point of connection between receiver and the provider. And there's what happens on a biological level in terms of our brain is that we generate oxytocin. And oxytocin, we know that we generate oxytocin in two major points in our life. One is at childbirth, and that's that bond between the baby and the mother, and where there's so much oxytocin that's released. And this is the hormone that really tells our brain that we're connected, that we're safe, that everything is good in the world. Yeah. And what happens many times in family life, and especially in the early age of little children, when we're very, very busy in the domestic, but then it goes all the way into the next stage, when we're more mature, the children might have left home, but we're a couple, actually, the only way they know as a family system to generate this oxytocin is through the children, through the love to the children. That's how somehow the place where everybody meets. But then if you take the children out of the equation, suddenly it feels very, like a desert, very barrow. How do you say that? Like
barren, very barren.
Very barren. But also when you do have the children in the equation, I believe that it's a huge burden to expect the child to be the sole source of this, of oxytocin. So stepping into a practice like the Om practice, the orgasmic meditation, is actually a way for a couple to learn how to generate oxytocin between them. And just creating that vibration, and it's very scientific, it's not out there, you're actually generating this this hormone that creates that feeling of connection, which we need so badly.
Wow, that sounds amazing, because I must admit, some of the tantric, I personally haven't been to one yet, and I will certainly go to one, which will certainly put me out of my comfort zone, because some of the rituals that I hear them having really freak me out just a little bit, and so that sounds like a nice way to just ease your way into connection, which is really important.
And really easy way into allowing yourself to receive without feeling or needing to do anything in return, not even move an inch, and starting this conversation of really how do I ask for what I need without driving my partner away? How do I allow myself to be in a place of receiving, but also being able to participate, say, I need this to be a little bit to the right, or this is great, but maybe a little bit to the left, and not shy away from that very, very important communication that we're somehow, many of us are very shut. And I want to say, with my clients, I think they're when clients that are ready to step into such a practice, many times you're not there in the relationship, you're not feeling safe enough yet to step into something like that. But the ones that do, many times there are two feelings. Or let's say three. For some, it's like a mind-blowing, oh my God, you changed my life. And for some, it is, I can't feel anything. And for some is, I feel so much that it actually feels more like pain than pleasure. And all options are valid. All options are valid, but it's just, that beginning of tapping into where you're actually at, and slowly unfolding and seeing what's there. and what wants to be released, what wants to be healed, what wants to be seen, what wants to be communicated. So yeah.
So beautiful. Wow, that sounds absolutely amazing. And so, and really, for women to allow themselves to receive is a big thing. To articulate what they want to is a big thing. But it's just been so amazing. Just, I'd love to hear your opinion. Just lastly, on you spoke about what was her name again? Perel, Esther Perel.
Yes.
She talks about how our partners in modern day society have become our everything. They've become our confidant and our lover because we somehow lost the social community structure.
Yes.
So I'd love you to speak to how important is it having friends? Because I'll tell you a funny story, and this is how it came about. Is that when I first met Doug, the most amazing man, kind and beautiful and attentive. One thing I found was that he wasn't on the same intellect level as I am, right? So I like learning and I'm always on the ball, and I was often using words that he did not understand. And I remember saying to my friends, oh, I don't know if that's going to work for me, right? Because, sitting in the head again. And my one friend very wisely said to me, look, you've got a choice here, okay? He's got a wonderful man who's kind and who adores you and doesn't understand, may not understand a word or not. You've got this amazing man that you can really love and engage in. And then you can go and find your intellectual stimulation somewhere else, or you could throw this wonderful man away because he doesn't understand a word you say. And I was like, wow, that's so powerful. I should see what's good in him and look for other stuff outside. And I know that a lot of women don't have a social circle anymore. They don't have a social friend circle anymore. So how important is that to your intimate relationship?
Yeah, it's. I think it's true that we have expected, out of our partners and out of relationships more. We're expecting more than what we've ever have expected in the past, and it's. I love the way Esther Perel says, it's like our partner becomes more, more than what is really possible for one human to be. Absolutely. He's our lover. He's the father of our children, our provider, our best friend, our confidant, our tribe, and so on and so on. And it's a lot to ask. And again, it goes back to I can't give what I don't have. And really, how do I create a life where I am whole? And from that place, I actually connect with the other. But saying that, I also think that it is also okay to need someone. And I think it is also a very big part of connection and relationship is actually, there is also a healthy element of dependency. And if I tie it back to the way we started our conversation, we were talking about fire. I think it's that really working with that energy, that in order to have fire, sometimes you need to put in wood, but you can also put too much wood and you can choke the fire. And sometimes what you need to do is actually give it air and give it space. So I think it's that dance between closeness and separateness, between my individuality and our togetherness. It's that's really our dance, and it really triggers our core wounds, because we're afraid. We're afraid to risk. We're afraid to let go. Some of us are afraid to, and I think that's also Esther's something that she said. Some of us are afraid to lose the other, and some of us are afraid to lose ourselves within the other.
Yes.
So it's again that dance between connection, between separateness and connectedness. Yeah, I think it's an exciting and very rewarding journey. You know, it could really trigger our most vulnerable insecurities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you will use the word dance, yeah, because I love dancing, you know, doo-doo-doo, I love it. And I just think, you know, in my experience, most people need to have a few drinks before they would ever dance because
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that's the same thing. Like, what are people substituting to do a dance? And yet, the beautiful thing about a dance is it's continuous, isn't it? And it just sometimes it works and sometimes it's better, but it doesn't. And so I love that. I love that word dance because literally, it's what it is. It's dancing, and yet the most important thing, as you keep saying, is that connection. Like, keep connecting, because it's easy to disconnect so easily, and it's coming back together and doing that dance again, you know. And I just the information you've given today, it's been so wonderful to me. Like, it's really spoken deeper within my soul. It's quite different to what I'm used to hearing, which I really love because I do a lot of research on this stuff, you know, and I really love the way you frame and then you say it, and I trust it will bring a lot of value to many women out there who want to be more intimate with their partners, who want to open up their own fire again. And I want to really thank you for sharing your beautiful knowledge and your beautiful spirit with us today. It's absolutely amazing.
thank you so much. Thank you for what you do, and I really I do really hope that this conversation can contribute and inspire. I think we all do it to one another. You know, we all bring to the table that little bit of experience that we had in our journey. You know, I've just, you know, I've just found this, you know, let me share it with you so you can also go through your own journey and grow. So I think it's really, we're all so connected.
We are. So one final question, which I always like to ask in the end, is we are called Women on Fire, obviously. Yeah. And so what is your fire? And what fire do you want to share with the world?
Oh, okay. That's a big question. You know, I think my fire is just in that moment, you know, of these years is changing focus. My focus was really, my fire was around my family and my children. And that was my strongest impulse, and I had to teach myself to keep the grounds of the other aspects of my being, to keep them nourished, but they weren't my first priority. And I feel now, you know, I'm moving into my mid 40s now, and my kids are older, and I think I have a strong fire to share and communicate. You know, I realized something really interesting, because I told you I had background in theater, and that's what I did in high school, university, and so on. Yeah. And at some point I got completely disillusioned with that world. And then I did a monologue for a project called The Vagina Conversation. And I gave a 7-minute monologue, and I felt so in alignment with my destiny. And I realized that that my attraction to theater and to actually speaking up and sharing was, my disillusionment wasn't about showing up and performing, but it was about showing up and performing as someone else. And I think my fire is really to show up and share from my authentic place, from who I am, as I am, and just allow whatever needs to come through to you or to anyone to do its way. And sometimes it could be through my words, and sometimes it could be through the cracks between the words. Sometimes it could be through my brilliance. Sometimes it could be through my imperfection. And just be in total surrender and service to that. So
it's amazing.
that's where I'm at, and yeah, I'm really open and available, you know, to work with whoever feels they could use what I have to offer on their journey. And you know, I work also because I'm quite, you know, I have I'm spread around, my connections are spread around the globe somehow. So I do work a lot through Skype and online, and also obviously if anyone wants to come here to Mullumbimby.
Oh, you know, who doesn't want to borrow, babe? Mullumbimby, what? No, sorry. Yeah, look, well, I'll put all your details and all your links on. So, yeah, look, once again, I really want to thank you for this amazing interview. We'll put all the details on there so people can contact you. And I really encourage the Women on Fire community to do so, you know, to speak to you and, you know, just to get the ball rolling, because having beautiful relationships is what really counts in life. Nothing else counts, you know. All that shit disappears, and it's really your relationships and your connections that create for a happy and wholesome life. So I always encourage people connect, because that's what the truth is, the value is really for me. And from energetically, and research has shown this too, right? So thank you again so much, Tamar. And I really look forward to staying in touch and seeing the wonderful work that you do in this world. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Petra.
See ya.
See ya.